Hi guys, and welcome to this new lecture about the trim path. We're still there. In the previous lecture, you learned how to use the trim path on a path that has been created with the pen tool. And also we learned how to use the offset to animate a portion of a path. In this lecture, we are going to see how to use the trim path on the parametric shapes such as the rectangle, the rounded rectangle, and the others. Let's take an empty composition. There is nothing here. And I will create, for example, a rectangle. Let's give this rectangle a certain fill, for example, whatever, it doesn't matter. And you have a rectangle that is filled. Let's add a trim path. We come to Content, we click on Add, and we say Trim Path. Now, if you scrub through the start or the end, you notice that the trim path is not only working on the stroke, but also trimming the fill. Now, this is nice, but not so nice. We usually don't use it like this. It is better to use it only on the stroke. So I will remove the fill and put it to nothing. Now, if you have a parametric shape such as the rectangle, the trim path works exactly like on the path, on a normal one. It will start from a certain node. This node is called the first vertex. You will know about this when we'll do Bezier shapes. And you can just scrub it through and create a nice animation and stories like this. No problem about this. Let's create a short animation here. We take the start to 100%. And go to 1 second and make the start 0. So we have just a single animation. I'm going to give you just examples so you can work your creativity and start creating more. If I take the rectangle and duplicate it, for example, a couple of times, and each time here I'll just move it, for example, to here. And rectangle 3 also move it, for example, to here. Now you have a nice animation or somehow a useful animation. Notice that the trim path will start and end then because we only have 2 keyframes for the trim path. What you can do is to take the trim path inserted in the shape layers. We'll see that later on. But also there is the option here, instead of simultaneous, you say individual. Now we start creating one after the other. Now that's a pretty interesting here if you have very nice shapes. So how does it work? The first shape it starts is the shape that is on bottom, the shape that has been created first. Then you start with the second shape, notice, okay, and then goes to the third one. So actually it will start with the first shape that you have created and go upward. Let's delete this one, the shape layer for the rectangle, and create a ellipse, or we create a circle. I press Shift to have a circle, press the space bar to put it somewhere good, come to the ellipse, and of course ellipse transform and put it just in the middle. It's not necessary, but I like this habit. Good. Now let's add a trim path here to the contents. I will click on Add and go to Trim Path, and let's see how it behaves with the circle. Let's stop the animation. If you scrub up with the start, you notice that the path is being removed clockwise. And if it's a 100%, it is redrawn anti-clockwise. If you use the AND, the same will happen, but it will redraw clockwise. And that is pretty interesting now. Let's keyframe the AND at 0%, come to 1 second over here, and make it 100%. Now you have a very simple animation, and I would like you to think, what can you do with that? Of course, it's pretty slow. Let's make it a bit more beautiful. You notice how the borders are cropped, or the end of line. I will come to Stroke, and go to line cap, and instead of butt cap, put round cap. Now it's a bit, nicer. It's rounded here. You can make it bigger. You can choose the layer and make it larger. So you see how it's happening. Now this is one. Notice that the trim path is outside the ellipse. If I take the ellipse and duplicate it, it's going to create 2 of them, and they have the same exact momentum. So better yet, take the trim path and put it inside the shape. Then take the shape and duplicate it. Now open the shape here. You have the keyframes for the trim path, but also you can open the trim path and offset it a bit, just a bit. Now one shape is on top of the other, then we make the second shape a bit smaller. Okay, like this. Fine, and let's animate now. They are exactly the same coming in and coming out. Pretty cool, but you can do much more than that. I will come to the beginning, keyframe the start, go to the end. take the start to 100%. Now obviously nothing is going to appear in the circle 2, just because one is opening and the other one is closing at the same time. So let's move the keyframes, and that will change the time. Now notice the gap here will determine how big is the stroke that is appearing and then closing. Cool, right? So if we want a small one, I will take the end and make it nearer to the start. If we play now, it is much smaller. That's one. Also, we can just move them a bit to create another illusion. That's pretty good. Let's also create the same thing for ellipse 1. Then I will select the trim path here, press Ctrl C, and then go to ellipse 1, open it, delete this trim path, then come to the ellipse 1 here and paste the new trim path. Now I have two of them coming in and coming out. Pretty interesting, right? So you notice you can copy and paste the trim path. That is one. Let's put the blur on and see the effect. Now the effects is much nicer. Of course, I'm just demonstrating to you about what you can do. The rest is up to you. Your imagination, your creativity is up to you. Since we are going to do a lot of these stories, it's okay not to develop this subject and start creating a million things. But I want to show you something else. I will delete this shape and I will take pop circle stroke. Do you remember this one? I will open this animation and it has so many of them. Okay, we choose one, the one that starts in the beginning, ellipse 2. So I will Ctrl C, copy ellipse 2 here, come back to the trim path that has nothing, create a new shape layer. I need a shape layer to put the ellipse 2. I cannot just paste it into nothing, you know. I need a shape layer. And I press Ctrl V, and notice now ellipse 2 is inside the shape layer, inside the content. If you run it now, you have this animation. Let's put the anchor point in the middle, and then let's move this one. We stop the animation and let's move it to the middle of the composition. You can just align it if you like this. Cool. Now let's look at the animation here. It opens and it goes away. What can we do here? Let's take the ellipse 2, or let's take contents and add a trim path. Let's work the trim path a bit here. What I want you to do is make the start at 100%. Cool. I keyframe the start. Let's start from the beginning. And then after some time, let's see when it's going to disappear, make the start 0%. Let's see what happened here. And we open, cool, not bad. Let's come to ellipse, we go to stroke and we make it round cap. And here you are. You have done now a better animation. That's not bad. You can also come to the trim path and say, I will easy ease. Come to the graph editor, hold the one keyframe, move it this side, and let's see what we have achieved. Cool. But I'm missing the shadows. I will come to the pop circle. I have the effects here. I will choose the two effects, press Ctrl C to copy them, come back and go to the layer. Of course, these effects are on the layer, and I press Ctrl V. Let's go back and run it and see what we have done. That is a magnificent animation on a nice pop. That is really cost you just a Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and you change the whole look of the animation with the trim path. Thanks very much for listening. This is what you can do with the trim path and the parametric shapes. I will see you in the next lecture with more about trim path and wireframe.